What was the motivation behind doing the ARPANET in the first place?
And I'm surprised
on?
you don't know by now.
I'm sorry?
That's a tongue-in-cheek comment. I know you know well. So just for the record, I would say that the motivations were multiple. Motivation number one was to explore the area of computer network resource sharing. So different computers. We were dealing with an era back then where the machines were all different. We didn't really have a lot of portability, and so if you wanted to use a resource, you sort of had to go there or get there through a network. Programs on the ILIAC weren't going to run anywhere else, and there were a lot of specialized resources as well. So trying to figure out how to share resources. If you had a simulation program running on one machine and somebody wrote one on another, how could they work together? It was an opportunity for the future, I mean, to sort of break new ground. So that was one motivation. A second motivation was specifically to allow the research community access to specific resources. So accessing a very large database storage system wasn't so much an interaction thing, although maybe you want to bring it back to another machine, but maybe you just want to see a data point on a screen. Mm-hmm. So that, I kind of lumped those two together in sort of the computer resource sharing activity. But the second question was, how could you build a network that would facilitate that in an economic and efficient way? So the use of the regular telephone network just didn't seem appropriate. Number one, the bandwidth was too small. I mean, maybe you could get 2.4 kilobits, but people were thinking we need at least an order of magnitude more than that. I mean, how could you possibly have a network that only had 2.4 kilobits of bandwidth in the backbone? And especially if you're multiplexing a lot of users. Number two, how could you do it reliably? Because phone lines made errors and computers needed perfect communication. And so the bottom line was it really needed a rethinking of how to do the networking in a cost-effective way. You could have bought lines and hooked everything up in a fully connected way, but this idea of packet switching had been floating around. And so DARPA was interested in showing that packet switching, in fact, was an efficient way of dealing with computer communications. They were trying to demonstrate a new mode of communications. And then finally, another motivation for it, although it wasn't so much funded in the research community as through interactions with some military sites, was to show its utility for command and control on a more global basis. But that was not driving it. That was one of the stated applications of it that they would explore. I think the motivation was more of a research motivation at the time.
But the command and control argument surely must have resonated with the people who fund DARPA, recognizing that computers could be used in command and control to manage resources better than they would otherwise. I seem to remember from that time period phrases like force multipliers that would allow a smaller force to overcome a bigger one because you could manage the resources better with the help of computers.
It is certainly true. Everybody understood that the potential was there. And at some level, you could argue that it was supported because of that potential, certainly at the level of the director or down below. But if you look at the people in the trenches who were building the technology and doing it, they thought they were solving a technical problem. And I think that was, I mean, this was not a military problem that had some urgency. They needed to decide by how to get a solution by 2 weeks from Friday.